everyone, and welcome to the Reformed Dissenters. Thank you so much for watching or listening to us today. Joe is cracking up here, and laughing is contagious, so it's nice. All right. Anyways, my name is Bruce Johnson, and I am joined here in the wonderful state of South Dakota by Weatherman Joe.
Hello.
And my awesome brother, Jacob Johnson, back home in Pennsylvania. And don't forget, you can go to our website, which is trdshow.net, to see a list of links to all of the platforms that we are on, both audio and video platforms. So if you're looking for free speech alternatives, pro-First Amendment platforms like Odyssey, Rumble, and Gab, you can find links to all of those platforms on our website. Don't forget, you can also email this show at trdshow@protonmail.com, and there's where you can send all of your questions and suggestions, and any information you want to share with us can be shared at that email address. If you're interested in hearing us do deep dives into some of the current events that we talked about on the show, you're going to have to follow us on our pro-First Amendment platforms such as Gab TV, Rumble, and Odyssey, because we're not going to be posting those on any platforms that could censor us and that hate free speech. Not naming names, YouTube. So we have a brand new theme this month.
No way.
Yes, very exciting, fresh off the press. Something we've wanted to do since the formation of the show, and this was actually kind of a pet peeve of mine. I love this particular theme, so I'm very excited about this month. The theme this month is discovering and using our God-given gifts. Discovering and using our God-given gifts. And so, naturally, to match our new theme, we had to have a new piece of literature for the month. So last month was Knowing God by J.I. Packer, and last month we were talking all about devotion to God above all else, and you can look at all, I think, 5 episodes where we talked about that. Lots of great information there. But this month, our book is Finding a Job You Can Love by Ralph Madsen. And so if you're watching us, you'll see our new book is here. Jacob has his there it is. And so that's the new book that we are reading. We also posted that on our Gab page last week, so if you were following us, you got a sneak peek into what we were going to be doing on the show. We're also drinking our coffee today, so we've all got our our mugs from some of our favorite shows. So you'll see us drinking some. We decided collectively today is going to be it's a good day for coffee. So just sipping on that. Yep. So, all right. So today, a bit of a breakdown of what the show is going to look like. First, we're going to start off by talking about the current events of the week. A lot of stuff happened this week. And so we're going to break some of those main headlines down, and that's going to help us also start breaking down some other very interesting topics we want to get into. After that, we are then going to talk about the literature of the month, which, as I just mentioned, was Finding a Job You Can Love by Ralph Madsen. And we have a few questions and answers from each of us about the chapters. We read chapters 1 and 2, and we're going to be discussing those during that segment. But before we can get to any of that, we have to talk about the verse of the week.
Ooh.
So, yes, ooh. So the verse this week, and again, we try to tie our verses into the theme of the month. And so the verse this week is 1 Corinthians 12, 5, and 6. And it says, there are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it is the same God at work. And again, that's 1 Corinthians 12, 5, and 6. And so obviously, I think the correlation to our theme in this particular verse is very plain and obvious. You know, there are different kinds of service, and, you know, God has given each of us different ways of accomplishing those kinds of work, those kinds of services, but in all of them, it should be our goal to glorify God through our work. And so we're going to be talking about that a lot this month. Ralph Madsen covers that very well in his book, and we're going to be setting that up really well in that literature segment. But before we move on, did you guys have anything that you wanted to add to that about the verse of the month?
Actually, I do.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that verse is very applicable to our theme. So like that choice.
Nice.
Something that came to my mind was how everybody does something differently. I think is kind of what you were saying. Well, but something came to my mind is a clock or a watch. How all the gears are very different, positioned in different ways, but yet they all are able to make the clock face run.
Oh, yes. Yes. Man, that's great. That's a
Right.
really good illustration. I like that. Yeah, all members of the same body. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed.
Joe is stealing my spot as the illustration master.
I love
Oh.
analogies.
Yeah, they make things very easy to understand, and it helps you remember them, too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's move into our current events breakdown. And Jake, you want to kick it off this week?
Like
Sure.
always.
Yep.
All right.
That's Jake's
So,
permanent
like
spot. It's kicking him off
Yeah.
every week.
Yep.
Start with
And
fire.
like I did last week, I'm going to read off the headline, and then I'm gonna have you and Joe, both you and
Ooh,
Joe,
surprise.
give your genuine reaction to it.
All
So
right.
here's the headline: Texas heartbeat law takes effect. Abortion after 6 weeks are now illegal after SCOTUS ignores emergency request to block law.
Nice. That's amazing. That is very exciting to hear. And I'm really glad to hear that's finally happened. I think I would love to know what it's like before 6 weeks. Right now I think there's some clause where if it like you can't it's hard to I think it's hard to know whether or not you're pregnant. You don't really start to notice until 6 weeks or close to 6. It's something like that. So you're not really going to be looking or taking pregnancy tests or anything like that. So the chance of you getting an abortion at that point is slim.
Right.
But I'd love to know the reasoning behind why they stopped there. Like, why is 6 weeks the cutoff and not just completely get rid of it? Like, why is it okay at, before 6 weeks but not after? So I love it. Great progress. Super, super excited. I hope more states adopt this and then some and take it farther and just ban them and declare it as murder, which it is.
I tend to think the reason why they started or stopped at the 6 week mark and not go full out completely illegal like Bruce was saying is, well, they're making baby steps. And baby steps is how to make progress and end with progress. I mean, you can't start crawling and then all of a sudden start running as another baby illustration.
Yeah.
But I tend to think that going from, I don't remember what the last part was, till 6 weeks, and I like to see it go even further and see a lot of states take this.
Yeah.
Especially like our good state of South Dakota.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's South Dakota that's down to what? Is it just one Planned Parenthood abortion
I think
mill?
so. And that's in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, Sioux Falls. So that's to be expected, I suppose. but it's really encouraging to see so many states, and I think there's even a chart out that shows the quote unquote neutral, which they're not neutral. If they're not taking a stand against it, then they are for it. But the neutral states, if you want to call them that, and then there's like 3 different phases, right? You're either anti-abortion, you're actively pushing laws against it, you have laws on the book that specifically ban it, or at least different types of it. Then you have laws on the books that actually help and support it and protect it. And of course, what do you think? The top of that, California, New York, Washington State. And then you've got the quote unquote, neutral states that are just not really involved. They don't have laws really in one way or the other. But as Christians, we know you can't serve 2 masters. So they are for it if they're not against it. If they're not fighting murder, then you're condoning it. So, but it is cool to see the list of anti-abortion states starting to grow. So that's very encouraging.
One state at a time.
Yep.
So,
indeed.
yeah, there are a couple things that I would like to first point out with this is that I've heard from multiple different places that this law is not something that Texas itself can enforce, but the wording of it is where now it opens itself up to lawsuits. So anybody that gets an abortion after 6 weeks, someone can bring a charge against them.
Wow.
Really?
But the actual
Oh.
Texas itself cannot enforce it.
Does that go hand in hand with the whole article that I read? Was this 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago? That talked about how the transgendered surgery is now child abuse, and if you think someone is considering that for their children, then they need to be reported, or they need to be, they can be sued. Does that go hand in hand with that, or same sort of
I
deal?
don't know exactly, but
Okay.
I do know that again. This is information that was brought to me, like just a little bit a little while ago. It wasn't something I could really do a lot of research on, and that I didn't have the time to really look into. I just thought I would mention that because that was something that I heard. But yeah, I've also heard that Chief Justice Roberts said that right said that this law is unconstitutional.
Yep.
Even though the Supreme Court did not take this case.
Wow.
So I'm like,
He's offering his
all right.
opinion, and
Yeah.
there's nothing he can do about it. Yeah, interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
So if you think it's unconstitutional, why didn't you take it into the Supreme Court?
Right. Well, I'm sure he probably voted for it and voted for
Sure.
because the vote was finally, or was it something where it was let go for like a week? It wasn't voted on by the Supreme Court, and then that's why Texas was then allowed to do it. Or it was held off, and the Supreme Court just didn't get involved. I think is that the way it worked out?
Right. So actually in this headline it says abortions after 6 weeks are now illegal after SCOTUS ignores the emergency request.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I wasn't following this particular law very closely up until this point. Obviously very excited about it now, but I guess a lot of people had been following this previously. So when I looked this up earlier this week, a lot of things people were saying was, finally, Supreme Court ignored it, all this kind of stuff. We weren't sure if they're going to ignore it, or even past articles were like, it's being sent to the Supreme Court today. We'll see what they say. It was language like that. And then now seeing it from this perspective, it's like, oh, wow, okay. So this has kind of been something that's been brewing for a little while. I think maybe a month or two, maybe longer than that. My time frame is way off on this. Like I said, I wasn't really following it, and I just casually glanced at some of the other articles related to it. But it looked like it was something that had been brewing for a while, gathering excitement, momentum, and then finally the Supreme Court just backed off, didn't even take it, and boom, Texas was allowed to go forward with it. So very cool.
So the very good thing about this is that now other states that want to put this law ahead or put this law in, they will be able to. And now I don't know if the Supreme Court will go after any other laws that other states will try and put in, but it looks like after Texas, it wouldn't seem right, or it would seem odd for the Supreme Court to go after any other laws. But one of the things that made the Supreme Court not go for this case was that because of that wording, that now it opens itself up to lawsuits, not actually enforceable by the government. So that's why this was allowed to go through. And that was another thing that, like, this is, like Joe was saying, baby steps. This is slowly something we're working towards. But this is a big step to remove all abortion in all 50 states.
Yep.
This law is, this law is now going to allow for other states to also do this.
Nice. Oh,
So
right, because it
this
set
is-
precedent. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so there is an actual court case that I was going to go over, but I didn't have much time to do that.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of laws that tried to there are a lot of court cases that tried to go through and in order to combat this law, but they just didn't work out. So
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this anti-abortion movement in general. It seems like rather than the anti-abortionists being in the minority, it certainly almost seems like we're evenly split or even leaning more towards us, which is very
Right.
exciting to
Right.
see across the nation. And there's even an event going on here in South Dakota, September 17th, I think it is.
nice.
And that's at the abortion. I forget the anti-abortion center or the pregnancy center here in around South Dakota in this area, which is cool. So, looking forward to that event as well. So, yeah, it seems like all over the place. There's pregnancy centers popping up, anti-abortion rallies. So, very exciting to see the momentum. Hope it continues.
And actually, that there is another law going through in Mississippi that is much like this law and will basically ban abortion.
Wow.
The only difference is the one here in Texas is 6 weeks, whereas the one in Mississippi is 15 weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yep.
But I wanted to ask, Kristi Noem said something about her looking into this law, and looking to do it here in South Dakota. Do you know anything about that, Joe?
I don't know.
Okay.
I heard about it last night, but
Oh. Yep. I remain dubious in terms of Kristi Noem. I mean, last year I was a big fan. Earlier this year I was a big fan. And now it's twice now this year alone in the past 3 months that she's let us down and done some not great things, and who knows how many more that haven't become public things that we're aware of. But yeah, the Lassiters have been have been dubious of Noem for a while. A lot of the local conservatives in South Dakota are dubious of Kristi Noem, and I'm starting to see it myself. She went after Matt Walsh. I think it was Matt Walsh. She went after and pretended like he was misogynist. And then she went after, she failed in terms of the transgender bill that she said that would have prevented it, but she did a whole, title inform or something like that. I forget what the clause was, but she took it back and, basically vetoed it, essentially. So it's just she's failed too many times now, and I'm starting to see that she's more of a politician than someone who's actually and Joe's over there super excited. He's like, yes, he's seeing the light. I was really excited earlier this year and last year for Kristi Noem. Like, yay, she seems like an interesting governor. She's standing strong on COVID, which she did. But it turns out she did it for political reasons. Her motivations are not pure. She seems like it. She talks a big game. She's Bill Barr all over again. So it's really sad to see. All right. Well, was that it in regards to that news, Jake?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Well, we are going to... thank you very much, by the way, for bringing that up and breaking that down and opening up a forum opportunity for that. That was good to discuss. Very exciting news. All right. We're going to move over to Weatherman Joe, who is going to earn his title officially today. So
Yes.
Take it away, Joe.
second week of weather. Weather or not. No, I'm sorry. Anyway, Hurricane Ida has struck Louisiana, and it has came with about 150 miles per hour wind.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Wow.
We've had Civil Air Patrol has been called out to come and help them with the cleanup and help them with trying to get things back cleaned up and get back to how it was originally so they can live in there again. And that was us as in South Dakota has been requested with to come out and help. And South Dakota from Louisiana to South Dakota, that's pretty big a jump. So it obviously was a pretty bad hit.
Wow.
Next thing I have on my list is California's still on fire.
Oh, for real?
Dead serious. I was looking at the map earlier today, and I'm like, surprised it's not halfway burnt up already, because it looks like on the map, it looks like it's got entire half
at this
of
point,
it.
It's hard to ignore this fire as judgment from God at this point.
I mean, I haven't seen the brimstone yet. But
yeah. It's waiting for the fire to come down from above and completely wipe it out. But
the map I was looking, it looks like it's halfway covered in fire flames.
Wow.
Key symbols. So
man, the craziest thing about that was when Trump was in office. And I think both of you know where I'm going with this. While I was not always a huge Trump fan or didn't even really follow him that closely until recently. But, when the fires were going on, I think even last year, he was like, hey, this is happening because you didn't take care of your forests, because you just left them be. What did God tell us to do? He told us to take dominion, to be good stewards of the earth. What did Californians believe? They wanted to do the exact opposite of that because it came from the Bible. They said, nah, we're going to let the forests do their thing. We're going to leave them alone. What happens when you don't take care of a forest? Branches fall, underbrush crops up, lots of dead branches, lots of dry brush, and that's what they're experiencing right now. And the craziest thing was when Trump said this last year, he was like, you guys gotta take care of your forests. You gotta clean up the brush. You gotta actually maintain this. This is what happens when you don't maintain it. And everyone called him crazy. They were like, you don't know anything. Why are you talking about this? You're just the president. You shouldn't talk about this. And he was like, all right. He backed off. And then after he was out of office and our new pretend president, Dementia Joe, stepped in, or at least the people just shoved him in there, shoved him in front of the podium. All right, I'm done.
After tripping?
Yeah, after tripping a few times, propped him up a little, like, stay there, Joe, just talk a little longer. After they did all that, a lot of work, the people were then like, man, we got to take care of these forests. You guys in California, you got to take care of your underbrush, blah, 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 blah. Exactly the same things Trump had been saying last year. It's just like, wow. But anyways, I wanted to mention that.
It's crazy.
Anyway,
so yeah. So it's amazing to see how there's a lot of fires currently still going on in California. And that has put South Dakota, part of the South Dakota state, on a severe possibility for having fires. It also doesn't help that we have a big drought right now as well.
Wow. So is there an alert in South Dakota for fires, or?
We are on stage. We're on a stage of we are high risk of getting fires.
All right, I'm staying indoors. Just gonna have some water around me. Make a little trough, maybe a moat. Anybody got any alligators? They're great for moats, I hear.
They are.
All right.
It helps protect
Why
your
alligators?
house.
Why alligators help?
I don't know. I mean, you can't just have a moat without alligators. You need something to put in there.
You might as well start making yourself a castle.
Yes, I think I'm gonna do that. See if my landlord allows.
All right. Well, we'll see if China has anything to say about this.
Oh, lovely.
Yes.
China's involved. Great.
So China. China
Maniacal laughter here.
China has been planning to make artificial clouds over India.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
And currently they are looking at having let me just triple check my numbers. 2.1 million square miles of artificial clouds over over India by 2025.
Can I just go on record as saying there will be absolutely nothing wrong with this plan? It will go super well. There won't be any issues. And it's all going to be great. So there we go. That's my piece.
And then after that, they're hoping and planning on being able to have 5.5 million square kilometers of being able to clouds so that they can put hail and rain in there.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah.
Wait, do they specify hail?
Mm-hmm. Covered by hail.
Who wants hail?
I don't know.
I'm confused.
Are they trying to destroy the crops or something?
I don't know.
Makes me wonder.
I think maybe there were some like dent repair shops there who needed business, and so they were like, all right, we got you covered.
Well, they're saying it will help with the disaster relief, so apparently they're looking at our California forest fires.
Uh-huh.
So they're trying to figure out a way to help prevent that, which is very interesting, if I may say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, California and China are just,
They're tight
They're
knit.
basically the same. So, one's hurting, the other one's hurting. So,
So yeah, they're trying to make it where they're able to control the weather, and they'll be able to kick the weatherman off the floor, and they'll be able to be like, now we're able to tell the truth and not lies, like everybody claims the weatherman giving lies.
Wow.
They'll be forever. They'll not
right.
forever. They'll be
corner
able
the market on weather predictions by making the weather themselves.
They will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is so China.
We're gonna have a hurricane today because we wanted to have a
We're
hurricane.
gonna have a
today.
hurricane. We decided, yeah, this is what's happening today.
Or we're gonna have a drought.
Hurricane Central.
All right, that's my piece of the week, and thank you for joining in to the Weather Channel.
Yeah, Weatherman Joe. All right, thank you, Joe. Very informative and frightening. Very frightening. Of course, you mentioned China, and I'm already got chills up my back. So, all right.
It's a little chilly.
Yeah, a little chilly.
I was kind of wondering, why are they doing that? Why are they putting clouds over India? But then Joe explained that it was for relief.
I think
that is literally how every single piece of government control starts. Hey, this is really well intentioned, and I'm actually about to get into that myself. This will help in this way, this way, this way. Oh, a bullet list of awesome ways our government control will help you. Sign up today, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like they'll be able to hide drones in there very easily.
Wow. That is one option.
Imagine if they can control the sky in
Don't
India.
give them ideas.
Yeah, right. Joe, stop. No.
Okay.
They're going to hire you.
But then they'll be able to sail it.
Can we copyright that idea right now so that when China does that, we can say, copyright infringement. Joe Lasseter said this a couple months ago, so sorry, China, can't do it.
Unfortunately,
Can't do it.
only our copyright works in our
shoot.
country. It doesn't work cross country.
All right. We'll figure something out. We'll do the paperwork on this. We'll get it sorted by next week, guys. Don't worry.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Okay. Last week I had a large topic, taxation, that we discussed, broke down, and I had some bullet points that I wanted to discuss and opened up the floor at each point, and we discussed those as a group. And I'd like to do the same thing today with a different topic, probably equally as controversial. And but a headline prompted this discussion. And I wanted to, read the headline first. Let's start with that. So, headline is, Teacher Instructs Students to Pledge Allegiance to Gay Pride Flag After She Removed American Flag from Classroom because it made her feel, ready? Here's the word, uncomfortable. Okay. This was apparently in the Newport Mesa School District in Orange County, California. This was crazy. Part of the article was she apparently took down the flag months ago, I guess. And but prior to that, she took down the American flag. Prior to that, she had said, "Hey, she had told her students, if you feel like the whole school has to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance every day. She said, if you feel like standing, stand. If you don't, don't stand. If you feel like saying the words, the Pledge of Allegiance, say it. If you don't feel like saying it, you don't have to say it. Personally, this is not even the primary controversial topic, but I know this topic is controversial too. I'm a fan of that, because why pledge allegiance to a country you don't agree with? I don't think pledging allegiance to a country is a good idea. Pledging allegiance to God is. Pledging allegiance to a country is not. So I'm with her so far. But obviously it was not that, her intentions were way off the mark. And what she did was, for Gay Pride Month, let's celebrate Sodom and Gomorrah, everybody. Woohoo. See if we can get burned down too. See if God will destroy us in his judgment as well. She put up a gay pride flag, rainbow flag, which, man, there's so many rabbit holes here. I mean, this is another thing I hate, is that they've corrupted the Noahic covenant. They've corrupted God's symbol of, it really should bring us comfort, right? I promise to never flood the world again, destroy the whole world by flood. Should bring us comfort when we see the rainbow flag, but no, they've corrupted it and twisted it for their own disgusting means. But that's a totally unrelated topic right now. And she had that hanging, and one of her students asked, hey, what do I look at when I pledge allegiance? Like, I want to pledge allegiance to America, to the flag, but I don't know what to pledge allegiance. What do I look at? There's no American flag here. And she's like, wow, that's not technically true. You see, there is a flag standing in here. Now look around. If you see it, maybe you could pledge to that flag. Obviously the gay flag was what she was talking about. So
it makes me wonder what their new Pledge of Allegiance is, because obviously if you're going to take down the American flag, you have to rewrite the Pledge of Allegiance, because it's I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Yeah.
One nation under God. Yep. Indivisible.
So what is the new words is I really, really wonder.
Yeah. Part of me is like, well, they don't want really a Pledge of Allegiance to anything other than just don't pledge allegiance to America because of its foundings, biblical foundings. Don't pledge allegiance to the Bible. Pledge allegiance to yourself, I guess, would be their slogan. I pledge allegiance to my own heart, incorruptible as it may be. I will trust it forever and believe it to be the ultimate source of truth so long as I live. Whatever I do, as long as it's good in my own eyes, is fine with me. The end. That's their plan, basically.
Who knows?
All right. So, here's my topic. Government schools.
Oh, no.
All right. Government schools and the huge topic that it is. I have several bullet points. The first is nothing is neutral, including the government schools. This is really important to understand. Nothing is neutral. We've discussed
Didn't
the
we
myth.
say that in our introductory?
We did. I was just about to say that. We've
episode?
discussed the myth of neutrality in previous episodes. Yep.
Yeah.
And Matthew 6:24 says this clearly when it states, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot be neutral. We can't pretend to be neutral, especially when it comes to children. These are eternal souls, eternal hearts and minds. Government schools, at the very least, this is the very least, okay? This is the best thing you could say about them. Teach that you can separate God from the rest of life. Like that's the best thing you could say about government schools. Like it just gets worse from there. But the best thing that could be said is that they separate God from the rest of life. They teach that science, literature, and history are one thing, and theology and faith are another. This is a false dichotomy that Ralph Mattson lays out in chapter 1 of his book when he talks about the incorrect separation between sacred and secular in our everyday lives. On pages 18 or 17 and 18, he says, when facing doubts about whether God's will could ever relate to daily life, you begin to question seriously whether your vocation or your family role was or ever would be an expression of God's will for your life. More than one husband and father or wife and mother new to the faith has expressed a longing for the day when he or she would be, and here it is, here's the phrase, free from work and domestic chores to really follow the Lord. As if the things that God has gifted and created them to do in their everyday life couldn't be used to really follow the Lord and glorify him.
Right.
It's a false dichotomy. Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Everything we do and think about in life should be done for the Lord. When we try to separate him from the academic world, we are practicing idolatry. We're leaning back on our own understanding rather than seeing the world through the lens of the Bible. There is no separation of God from anything. God should be involved in everything we do, think about, say. You can't separate, that's history, that's literature, that's science. That has nothing to do with God. We'll separate. We'll leave him out of that. That's idolatry. That's worshiping a pagan idol. What do you guys want to, if anything to say about that, add to that bullet point?
It's still hard to imagine all the atoms that is in a human, all the gases that we need to breathe in, breathe out, the stars, down to the littlest atom in the earth. It's put together so perfect.
Yeah.
But yet people just can't see that. Some of them don't even think that there's a creator. It was just the Big Bang.
Yeah, right.
And yep. I'm
about to talk about that actually in the next segment too.
Woohoo! I'm getting you hurried along.
Yeah, you're good.
It's
segue maker.
It's hard for me to grasp. How can you not have a creator who loves this earth, who loves this universe, and thinks that, somebody came here, built it, and left away, or there was a Big Bang, or anything. Right. Yeah. It's, at least to me, it's incomprehensible.
Yeah. The more we learn about science, the world around us, the human body, the human brain, the less excuses we have to believe in evolution. Because we see how intricate, delicate, beautiful, and complicated our world actually is. And no learned man can deny the fact that we were created by an intelligent being and God who we couldn't even hope to comprehend at that level of intelligence that he possesses.
Yeah, it would make no sense that we were all created just by randomness. Everything is just random.
I mean, maybe back in Charles Darwin's day when he knew very little about science, when, they didn't know the origins of life. I think one thing they said was you put a piece of rotting meat in a jar, you close it off. They thought that life would just originate somehow, and it didn't. That was proven wrong. Life didn't come from non-life. We don't see that now. We haven't seen that before. We never will unless God creates life. But there's just so much that they didn't know. So much we still don't know. We don't know a quarter of what there is to know about this universe, about ourselves, about the human brain even. And we've had centuries to study it. Yep. All right. And next bullet point. Go ahead, Jake.
That just shows you how crazy people will be to prove that God isn't a person or that God isn't real.
It's a deeper motivation.
In order for them to not have to obey God's law, they will go through. They will try to explain the craziest of things and give the craziest of answers.
We came from monkeys. We used to be monkeys, everybody.
Yeah, and that we can kill babies, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yep. Well, if we really are all just animals. Killing, stealing, what the heck? I mean, we don't throw the lion in jail when he kills and eats prey, right? We don't kill or discipline or punish animals in the wild when they, kill other animals. That's just what animals do. And if we're just animals, what moral values could we hope to possess? And why should I believe in your moral values? I'm just a different animal than you are. I just look at the world differently than you do. There is no absolute truth.
I still can't wait for some of these animals to start being able to create technology.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Since we are from apes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when
And if we're not the most advanced species on the planet, I'd like to see some animals build a computer. Can we get let's put the rabbit at Apple and have them build a smartphone for us. Can we do that tomorrow? Let's sign them up. See what happens.
let's see the elephant and the mouse become two great friends.
Right. So, my next bullet point. I have a lot of bullet points, so I'll try and get through these quickly.
How many more you got?
Several. Okay. The government schools are pushing a religion contrary to the word of God. Not only is the Bible not taught in government schools, but the curriculum that is taught goes directly against almost everything God has declared as truth. The notion of a creator is labeled as folly, which we were just discussing. Against all scientific evidence and biblical truth, teachers indoctrinate children to believe in faith that our beautiful and wonderfully created world is the result of an explosion and random chance. In faith, because they have yet to prove it. They can't prove it. They can't replicate the Big Bang. And scientifically, if you can't replicate that, you can't prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. You have to believe it in faith. And they're basing an entire worldview on that level of faith. It is a religion. It's no better than a religion. It's still a religion that's taught in the government schools. The Bible is taught as an outdated piece of history, and that no longer applies to us today. Children are taught that morals are dictated by laws of the state and not by the word of God. They are taught that people with mental illnesses, like transgendered people, are to be praised and encouraged in their insanity instead of helped and brought back to reason. Sins that God calls an abomination, some of the strongest language God uses in his word. Sins that he calls an abomination, such as gays and lesbians, are highly encouraged and taught to be accepted. These are just a few of the tenets of the progressive postmodern religion children are indoctrinated to believe in the government school system. This is why I usually refer to this horrible institution as the government indoctrination camps. Parents who send their children to government schools today are condoning idolatry. They are offering their children up to false gods and false teachings. It's no better than in the Old Testament when born children, just newborn children, were offered up to the pagan gods. It's the same thing. Anything you guys want to add to that before I move on to the next bullet point?
Nope.
Okay. Next bullet point is the origins of government schools. Sorry. Okay. Thought Joe had something to say. He's telling me how much time we have left. Because I can get rambly. So thanks, Joe. All right. During the 1830s, at the height of the Industrial Revolution, Horace Mann, a government official in Massachusetts, pushed for a government-run education system in America. He claimed to have the best of intentions for this government system and even said the Bible should be taught to the children within the system. But one of the primary motivations for this new system of government-funded education was to meet the rising need for, ready for this, factory workers within the Industrial Revolution. They needed people who could work within manufacturing lines, obediently do as they were told, and have basic comprehension of academics. That's why the government schools were created.
Yep.
So
the government school... Yep, go ahead.
So to brainwash people?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that didn't really come till later. They saw it as a tool for that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it was originally developed to meet the rising need of factory workers. They didn't have enough people who were just doing what they were told and just wanted to work on a factory line. People around that time were too ambitious for their tastes. They needed people who could just stand in one spot, do the same thing day in and day out and over again. They didn't want people who were creating their own businesses. They didn't want entrepreneurs. They didn't want free thinkers.
And that's funny because I've seen that a lot of homeschoolers want to be entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that
the
they're
correlation is crazy. Yep.
What they choose to do and what they want to do is to somehow change something into a business of their own.
Yes.
It's kind of funny you bring this topic up because in my sociology class, I had seen that as a prime example. So our sociology teacher asked us the students, to give her one or a couple of our prized possessions or things that we hear hold to us dearly that we have on ourselves. More than half the class actually did that, and the only reason why she did that was to see, or she explained to us that because those who had grown up in the schools, they don't double think. The teacher tells them what to do, and they automatically fall and do it.
Yep.
It's like, it was an eye-opening thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
There's this person that nobody knows,
Right.
but because she's the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically have so much trust in them. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the government in a way.
Well, they replace the mother and the father. They have to. And when the Bible says honor your father and your mother, now it's honor your teacher and the stranger who's now in charge of you as your mother and father.
So the teacher and the principal?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really sad. The government school system met this need perfectly, the need of factory workers, by creating an environment where students were treated as products in a factory that produced factory workers in large batches. If one or two... Oh, Joe's book fell. All right. If one or two kids fell through the cracks, that wasn't an issue. They just needed to make sure that large quantities of people who did what they were told were injected into society. Even today, this is the vision of schools in America. They don't want free thinkers. They want people who do what they're told. That's what they want. Anything to add before I move on to the next point? I've got 2 more points and that's it. But my next point is kind of shorter.
It almost sounds like slavery.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does.
Industrial workers.
Yep.
And trying to make them.
Yep.
Yep.
This is what you get when you move away from God's word, when you lean on your own understanding, when you declare yourself as the undecided rule or the ultimate person of authority. When you get to decide what the government does and doesn't do yourself and with your own human knowledge rather than relying on the Bible, you get these things. You get slavery. You get theft. You get horrible things like this. My next point, the government should not be involved at all in education. Biblically speaking, the civil government is quite limited in what it is allowed to do. A large portion of the responsibilities given to the magistrate are summarized in Romans 13:4. And it says, if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. So what we see there is a civil magistrate, civil government that carries out justice on the evildoer. Very limited. Okay. Gary DeMar states this well in chapter 4 of his book, God and Government, which I have right here. When he says, it should be evident that the creature has no authority or power to dictate or to establish the requirements of civil government. This responsibility belongs to the one who established the realm of civil government, the one who established that realm. Therefore, its authority should not extend beyond the requirements set by God. This means that the state is not to operate in the areas of the family, school, or church if the Bible makes no provision for the civil government's power and authority in these areas. There's a lot more I could say about that, but I really want to get on to my next topic, and this is the one I want to talk about with you guys. And, you know, if the government's not meant to do this, who are? What fills the void? If the government doesn't, educate and train children in a society, who's supposed to fill that void? What does biblical education look like in a biblical society?
Isn't there a role in the Bible that certain people are supposed to play in that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, biblically, and this is my point, it is the parents' responsibility to train their children. Deuteronomy 5, verses 6 and 7 says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. And here it is, key verse, you shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 23:13-14 says, do not hesitate to discipline a child. If you spank him, he will not die. Spank him yourself. Again, yourself. This is not a responsibility you just, give off to someone else. This is the responsibility of the parents. Spank him yourself, and you will save his soul from hell. Proverbs 6:20 says, my son, observe the commandment of your father, and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. Does it say, do not forsake the teaching of the civil government? Do not forsake the teaching of the civil magistrate education system? No, I think it says, do not forsake the teaching of your mother and the commandment of your father. I don't know. I don't see civil government in that. Weird. Proverbs 29:15. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child who gets his own way brings shame to his mother. There are so many other verses. These are just a few verses that relate to parents raising children, not the state or some school system raising children. God created a mother and a father, each with distinct tasks and responsibilities. He didn't give children to parents so that they could just be sent off at the earliest possible second to a system that could not possibly love and care for them the same way that parents love and care for their children. No system can ever or should ever replace the role of a mother and father in a child's life. And I think that's very, very important. And that, I believe, is one of the biggest reasons our society in America is crumbling today. Parents have given their role, their responsibility to the state. They've said, nah, making money is more important to me than raising eternal souls, than taking care of eternal souls and molding them at their most fragile and impressionable time in their life. It's vitally important that parents understand the importance of raising children themselves. God gave them to you. God did not give them to the state or to any other institution. Anything you want to add to that before we go on to the literature of the week?
I got when you were listing off Bible verses, I'm like, I gotta pull up my favorite Bible verse, and it says from Ephesians 6:1-2, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say honor your schools, honor your teachers, honor your principals.
Yep. And a large part of this, I've heard a lot of times, well, I'll send them to the state and they'll teach them math. They'll teach them science, history, all that stuff, academics. And then when they get home, then somehow I'm going to shovel out all the other garbage they put in their head and put in the gospel of Christ, the truth. I'm like, really? Why? Why would you do that? Why would you assume that there is a difference, that there are two separate worlds, that you can have the academic world over here and the sacred biblical world over here? Secular, sacred, not something we see in Scripture. God does not say, all right, I'm not involved in history, I'm not involved in literature, I'm not involved in science, math, any of that stuff. Okay, so don't ever teach your children that I'm involved in that, okay? Just make sure that you tell them about some of the things I talk about in my word, and that'll be enough. That's good enough. No. That's not something that we should have in our minds, that there's that separation. All right.
That was a long segment.
Yes, it was a very long segment. So I got a little rambly. I'm sorry. This is a topic I feel very strongly about. So, okay.
54 minutes.
All right. Yep. That's all right. This is going to be a longer episode. But, I've been getting a lot of emails, a lot of comments on our videos and content saying, you can make it longer. We wouldn't mind.
Really?
So, yeah. So
that's good to hear.
People are looking for more content. So this is not a huge issue, which is good.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I was really glad to hear that too, because I'm like, okay, good, because we're about to get into some topics that I can get really rambly about. So now I have permission to ramble. All right, sweet. Jake, that goes for you too. I know you can ramble.
Oh, wow.
And then there's me.
On
and then there's Joe. Joe can ramble too. Yeah.
Sometimes I like to be short, sweet, and to the point.
We're the Reformed Dissenters and the Reformed Ramblers occasionally. All right. speaking of rambling, next segment. Here we go. Literature of the week. This week, first time with a new piece of literature, Finding a Job You Can Love by Ralph Mattson. And this week we read chapters 1 and 2. We started at the beginning. How about that?
So before we get into this,
do you want me to say the first question first, or do you want to?
Oh, I wanted to throw a random question.
Go ahead.
So does that mean if I want to be a teacher, is it okay if I enjoy teaching?
Yeah, of course. I think, there's a conversation that needs to happen. Because certainly there are people out there, families, mothers, who can't do all of it. There's a lot in academics, right? So certainly they can't do everything by themselves, but they can band together with other people in the church, other people online. In our modern society, if you're telling me that you don't know trigonometry or algebra and so you can't homeschool your children, you haven't heard of the internet.
YouTube.
There are so many resources, really good resources online. That's how I learned. That's how I learned math. Now, I was not a math person, so unfortunately, I got what I needed to get, which was great. But I've gone through so many courses in college, and I'm just clearly not a math guy. But I know other people an engineer friend of mine who actually homeschooled his children and used this same math, and they did like super well. They got to trigonometry in high school and all this stuff. I'm just like, wow. Yeah. It depends on how hard you want to look. There are companies out there who are solely devoted to helping homeschoolers find curriculum. You are not alone as a homeschooler who does not want... who wants to take on the responsibility of training their children themselves. They are not alone. And if you know someone who might want to homeschool, but they're not sure that they could do it themselves because they're not a teacher, all this stuff, right? Have them send me an email or give them, my information. trdshow@protonmail.com is the email for the show. Email us there, and we have lots of resources for you. So thanks for asking that, Joe. That's a really good question. I think a lot of people would have. So that's good to know. Okay, first question about the literature of the month. What did you find most interesting about the chapters? And Jake, you want to kick it off?
Alrighty. So this is what I found most interesting. And again, this is something... it kind of ties in to the second question, something that I've already known but talked about in a different light. But I think that's also interesting. But here we go. We know that we want to serve God in all that we do. Well, when brought the prospect of work, we of course would say that our work should be done to the glory of God. Ralph Mattson states in his book that many Christians understand that work should be done to the glory of God, but not many Christians understand how far we should go. We should take that. Ralph Mattson says that just doing your work with honesty, humility, or just doing a good job is not enough. He says that the work you do or the field that you go into matters.
Yeah.
We have to strive to find God's plan for our lives, and that includes our work.
Nice.
We're all created differently, so we each have our own skill sets, and we must find a job that fits those skills.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Jake. Thank you very much for breaking that down. Okay, Joe.
All right. Well, so there's a couple points that I really liked about the chapter. Mainly chapter 2. Chapter 1 I liked, but it was kind of an overview. At least I felt like it was an overview.
Yes.
So I am going to mainly stick in chapter 2 today. I really liked there are several of the points that were brought up, and I'm just going to read the headlines, and that was God's will is joy and God's will is pleasure. It's really interesting to think that we're not in a perfect world. We don't have to act perfect because that's not what God expects from us. He doesn't expect perfect, everything to be perfect he does it. He does his will for us is to have joy and have pleasure and enjoy time on earth. At least that's what I took away. I don't know what y'all took away.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I took away. And there was this in here that it says, apparently we cannot be in God's presence without experiencing pleasure. And if you want to continue reading that, that's on page 29, paragraph 1. So that one sentence just was like really stood out to me. It's like we can't be in God's presence without pleasure of being in there.
We're not drudging through life just like, oh, yep, I'm obeying God. Yep, I'm doing what he said. Can't wait to get to heaven. This life is horrible. It's, wow, I'm obeying God, and he's blessing me through that. And as the rest of the book we'll get to, he's created us with gifts and abilities, and when we do what he's created us to do, we find pleasure in that. We find joy in that, in doing his will that way, the way that he created us to perform his will and carry out his will. Yeah, it's not something that's not like, well, just get a job and just make money. That's the main point, really. And try to do some evangelism while you're there. It's like, no, actually, God has a little bit more of a plan for us than that.
I'm really glad that it's not a work-based religion, but it's a relationship with Jesus Christ rather than, oh, you have to, I don't know, build so many houses or
right,
do certain things. It's a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Cool. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right. My answer. First question. What did you find most interesting about the chapters? Mattson talks throughout the chapters about the false dichotomy between the sacred and the secular. And I've mentioned this a lot throughout the show today. But he focuses on this on pages 18 and 19 when he says, and this is his quote, search for the fulfillment promised in conversion and assured throughout Scripture. They want their earthly years to overflow with meaning. Are we converted merely to see others converted, who in turn are to see it that others are converted, each in turn embracing evangelism as his sole reason for being? Surely God wants more from us and for us. He then goes on to say that evangelism, this is another quote, evangelism as an end in and of itself is patently absurd. Those who base their lives on such an idea dilute their own effectiveness as soul winner by attracting people susceptible to salesmanship rather than by winning people to a Christ-centered lifestyle, a way of living that radically alters their direction and purpose. Evangelism brings us to the kingdom, but once we have entered, we must seek the purpose of being in the kingdom. Still his quote, and that's the end of his quote. Okay, Mattson is again breaking down the notion that we can live both secular or sacred and secular lives. He's talking about how every aspect of our lives should reflect Christ. So, okay. Question 2, what did you find most surprising? Something you hadn't considered that way before. Jake?
All right. My answer to the question 2 is what my answer here is might be a very controversial topic. But Ralph Mattson says that among other things, that God's will for our lives is pleasure. He says that we see this case being said in the Catechism, saying that the chief end of man is to obey and enjoy God. Mattson is quick to say that people are skeptical about this topic because Satan uses our pleasure against us in a way that God did not intend. But God did intend for us to enjoy all his creation. Mattson shows that God is the author of pleasure.
Nice. Thank you very much, Jake. So since we are running a bit short on time, I'm just going to skip down to question 3, actually. Unless, Joe, did you have something like you really wanted to add to that? Or?
Well, I mean, it was just another quote in the Bible. Wow, okay. In this book that it was kind of really going along with what Jake was saying. And it was just how in this book it was saying, and here it is hell is clearly not a place of pleasure and satisfaction, but heaven is. And I just thought, well, he's talking about how pleasure, God created pleasure, and then Satan kind of ruined it at the Garden of Eden.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Thanks. Okay, what part of the reading do you think most applies to the theme of the month? And Jake, you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer first since I didn't?
You go ahead and answer.
All right.
Yeah, you
So,
can answer.
these first two chapters are all about Mattson setting up the rest of the book. They are describing the importance of God's will and the happiness that following his will brings us. In chapter 2, he outlines some of the primary attributes of the will of God, and Joe was just talking about this, actually. Ralph Mattson lists the will of God as being joy, pleasure, and beauty, those three things specifically. When talking about the joy of God's will, Mattson references Hebrews 12:2, and Hebrews 12:2 is Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, and says, and this is Mattson's quote, "Like Jesus, we will discover the reality of bliss that is at the end of any path the Father may send us down, difficult or otherwise." End quote. When talking about the pleasure of God's will, Ralph Mattson says on page 29, 29, here we go, Joe. We saw the same page. And then here's his quote: "The rules of God, the will of God, are not intended to prevent pleasure, but to protect our capacity for pleasure. To pursue pleasure on our terms instead of his is to court disaster. It will cut us off from the eventual ecstatic realization of God, whom to know will be ultimate pleasure." End quote. He later adds, and this is another quote, that know God, but realize you cannot do so without pleasure. And I think that was what Joe also mentioned up, or something, something like that. Something to that effect. Also on page 29, he says, "The Father's will was Jesus' ultimate source of life. It was his sustenance, possessing color and texture and taste as of good food." End quote. When talking about the beauty of God's will, Mattson says on page 32 that creation, even in its fallen state, convinces us of the reality of divine beauty and assures us that the result of our willingness to abandon ourselves to his intentions can only be further beauty. As we are individually embraced by his will, we find that our lives are richer, our former emptiness now full of grace. He goes through all of this to demonstrate the desirability of God's will, to show that it's something we actually should desire, something we want to achieve and strive for. His point is that it's something we should be striving to figure out. It's not only God's fulfillment of our lives, but it will also bring us joy, pleasure, and beauty. As we continue throughout this book, you'll see that God's will is that we discover and use our God-given gifts for his glory. And Jake, did you want to add your answer to that question? What part of the reading do you think most applies to the theme of the month?
Sure. So the theme is discovering and using our God-given gifts. Now, in my answer, I want to touch on the very first point in that theme is, how do we discover our God-given gifts? Well, I want to refer to the second chapter. This chapter talks all about how to know God's will for our lives. This ties with our theme very well. In order for us to discover our God-given gifts, we must first understand God's will for us. This will not make us immediately discover our gifts, but it puts us on the right track. We know that the Bible is our foundation, which everything is built on. In order to know or understand anything, we must first go to the Bible. So it is only fitting that we start this theme with going and trying to understand God's will in order to understand our gifts.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, that was very well put. Joe?
My mind went blank.
Yes, that happens. So tying it back to the question again is what part of the reading do you think most applies to the theme of the month? And again, the theme of the month is discovering and using our God-given gifts. I don't know if that sparked anything.
Not really.
Okay.
But anyway, the one thing that I would think is it kind of goes back to knowing, yet it's not in this book, but knowing who you are through Christ. For one is, knowing who you are for Christ, and then knowing that you can have joy through God and pleasure through God and beauty through God.
That's exactly what this whole book is about.
You have to know who you are in order to know what your talents are, what things you really like to do.
You have to know, your gifts, what you were given, what God created you to do, so that you can then pursue that. Yep, absolutely.
That's what I'll end with.
Nice. Thank you, Joe. All right. Any closing remarks before we go?
Yes,
our longest show yet.
Are we trying to make it longer and longer?
Not on purpose, but it happens sometimes. Can't avoid it. When we've got good topics, that's what happens. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If you are still listening and you made it all the way through, thank you so much for listening to us thus far. We hope you really enjoyed the show. Don't forget, you can go to trdshow.net. That's our show's website. And there you can find a list of links to all the platforms that we are on, both audio and video platforms. Please, please, please follow us on gab.com. Again, that's gab.com, and I believe you can do gab.com/TRDshow. Get on Gab. That's his sticker, Andrew Torva's sticker. Get on Gab. I should really get a shirt that just says Get on Gab, but get on Gab. It's a great platform. If you want to email the show with questions, suggestions, information, hopes, dreams, aspirations, you can go to trdshow@protonmail.com. Again, that's trdshow@protonmail.com. You can send all your email and information there. Looking forward to hearing you. And until then, we will see you on the next episode.
And remember, everybody, in everything you do, do as unto the Lord.